General Kethra stood before the largest gathering of alien species in the known galaxy. The great assembly hall of Varanthos Prime stretched for miles in every direction. Floating platforms held representatives from over 4,000 different species. Some breathed oxygen, others breathed methane or pure nitrogen. Some had no bodies at all and existed only as patterns of light. Together they formed the Galactic Concord, the ruling body of civilized space. Kethra was a Thessian, a species of tall gray beings with 4 arms and eyes that could see in complete darkness. He had served as a military general for over 200 years. He had fought in a dozen wars and won them all. His people respected him. His enemies feared him. But today, standing before the conquered, he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt afraid. "Honored representatives," he began, his voice carried by translation devices to every corner of the massive hall. "I have spent the last 5 years studying a newly discovered species in the outer spiral arm. They call themselves humans. They come from a small blue planet called Earth, and I am here to warn you about them." Soft laughter rippled through the assembly. Kethra had expected this. He continued anyway. "The humans are not like other young species. They are strange. They are dangerous. And if we are not careful, they will become the greatest threat this galaxy has ever known." High Arbiter Zolmesh, the ancient crystalline being who led the Concord, made a sound like breaking glass. It was the Arbiter's way of expressing amusement. "General Kethra, the humans control only 12 star systems. We control millions. They have existed in space for barely 2 centuries. We have ruled for 50,000 years. What could they possibly threaten?" Kethra activated the display behind him. Images of humans appeared, going about their daily lives on their various colony worlds. They looked so ordinary, so fragile. "Look at them," Kethra said. "They have no claws, no armor, no poison. They cannot see in the dark. They cannot breathe underwater. They live for less than a century. By every measure, they should be weak." He paused and let his words sink in. "But they are not weak. They are the most dangerous species I have ever studied." The laughter faded. Some representatives leaned forward with curiosity. "Humans evolved on a death world," Kethra explained. "Their planet is covered with predators, poison, disease, and natural disasters. The air itself carries sickness. The water hides creatures that can kill in seconds. Most species would die on Earth within days. But humans did not just survive there. They conquered it. They became the dominant species on a planet that tried to kill them every single day." He changed the image to show ancient human hunters chasing a large animal across a grassland. "They are persistence predators. Do you understand what that means? They do not chase their prey to catch it quickly. They chase their prey until it dies from exhaustion. They can run for hours, for days. They follow their target without stopping until it simply cannot run anymore. And then they eat it." The hall grew quieter. "They took wolves, one of the most dangerous predators on their planet, and turned them into pets. They call them dogs. These animals now love humans more than they love their own kind. Humans have a gift for making allies out of enemies." Kethra showed images of human history: wars, disasters, plagues, famines. They nearly destroyed themselves many times. They invented weapons that could burn their entire planet. They fought wars that killed millions of their own kind. They poisoned their own air and water. Any other species would have gone extinct. But humans did not. Every time they fell, they got back up. Every time they faced destruction, they found a way to survive. He turned to face the assembly directly. "I have studied their history in detail. They have a concept that does not exist in most galactic languages. They call it spite. It means doing something not because it helps you, but because someone told you that you could not do it. They will hurt themselves just to prove a point. They will die just to send a message. They consider this a virtue." High Arbiter Zolmesh flickered with impatience. "This is all very interesting, General. But what is your point?" "My point is that we should not make enemies of this species. They hold grudges across generations. They remember insults for centuries. They write songs about revenge. If we harm them, they will never stop trying to harm us back. Never. They will pass their anger to their children, and their children will pass it to their children, until the debt is paid in blood." Kethra took a deep breath. I am asking the Conquered to offer humanity associate membership. Bring them into our civilization as friends. Trade with them. Share knowledge with them. Make them allies before it is too late. The hall erupted in noise. Representatives shouted objections. The idea of treating such a young and primitive species as equals was absurd to most of them. High Arbiter Zolmesh raised a crystalline appendage, and silence fell. The motion to grant humanity associate membership will now be voted upon. The vote was quick. Of the 4,000 member species, only 153 voted in favor. The motion failed completely. Zolmesh continued. We will now vote on Resolution 749, the implementation of resource management protocols in human-controlled space. Their systems contain valuable minerals that the Concord requires for expansion. Kethra felt his heart sink. Resource management protocols. It was a polite term for taking whatever the Concord wanted from species too weak to stop them. It was legal under Concord law. It was also, in Kethra's experience, the fastest way to make permanent enemies. I must object, he said. This action will provoke exactly the response I have warned you about. The humans will not accept this. They will fight. Zolmesh made the breaking glass sound again. With what? They have no fleet worth mentioning, no allies, no power. They will accept our terms because they have no choice. This is how the galaxy works, General. The strong take from the weak. It has always been so. The vote passed with overwhelming support. As the assembly dispersed, Kethra stood alone on his platform. He watched the representatives float away to their ships, already forgetting about the small species in the outer spiral arm. He activated his personal communicator and sent a message to his homeworld. The message was short. Begin construction of defensive shelters. Stock them with supplies for a long war. The Conquered has made a terrible mistake, and when the consequences come, I want our people to survive them. He looked up at the stars visible through the great glass ceiling of the assembly hall. Somewhere out there, a species of persistence predators had just been given a reason to hunt. Kethra wondered how long it would take for the Concord to realize what they had done. He suspected that by the time they understood, it would already be far too late. The Concord fleets arrived at human space exactly 3 months after the vote. They came with legal documents and weapons that could crack moons in half. The message was clear. Cooperate or die. The first ships appeared above New Darwin, a mining colony on the edge of human territory. The colony had 40,000 people. The Concord fleet had 200 warships. The colonial governor, a woman named Sarah Chen, looked up at the massive vessels blocking out the stars and knew she had no choice. What do you want? She asked through the communication channel. Your mining output now belongs to the Galactic Concord, the fleet commander replied. You will meet production quotas set by our administrators. Failure to comply will result in enforcement actions. This is not a negotiation. Sarah Chen wanted to fight. Every part of her wanted to tell them to go to hell. But she had 40,000 civilians and no military ships. She lowered her head and accepted the terms. The same scene played out across human space. Colony after colony watched Concord fleets arrive and take control of their resources. The humans on these worlds were not killed or enslaved. They were simply ignored. Their opinions did not matter. Their protests were not heard. They were treated like furniture in a house that now belonged to someone else. Earth's government sent diplomatic messages every single day. They filed formal complaints. They requested meetings. They begged for the chance to negotiate. The Concord did not respond. Human ambassadors traveled to Concord stations and waited for months in reception areas. When they were finally allowed to speak, they were given 5 minutes. Their concerns were noted and filed. Nothing changed. The message was clear. Humanity was nothing. Humanity did not matter. Humanity would take what it was given and be grateful. For a year, the humans tried to work within the system. They followed every rule. They met every quota. They smiled and nodded and hoped that good behavior would earn them respect. It did not. Then came Meridian 7. Meridian 7 was a farming colony. It had no strategic value. It had no rare minerals. It was simply a place where 300,000 humans lived and grew food. The Concord decided they wanted the planet for something else. The humans would need to leave. Governor Thomas Blackwood refused. This is our home, he said to the Concord commander. We built this world from nothing. We will not abandon it. The commander was a being made of living metal, a species called the Vorathi. It did not understand the concept of home. It only understood orders. You have 24 hours to begin evacuation. Failure to comply will result in enforcement actions. The people of Meridian 7 did not evacuate. They gathered in their towns and cities. They held hands and sang songs their grandparents had taught them. They refused to move. The Concorde fleet opened fire. The first shots were meant as warnings. They struck empty fields and forests. But when the humans still did not move, the fleet commander grew impatient. Orders were orders. Schedules had to be kept. The bombardment lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 400,000 humans were dead. Entire cities had been turned to glass. Families were vaporized while sitting at their dinner tables. Children died in their beds. The Concorde called it a regrettable but necessary enforcement action. Across human space, people watched the footage from Meridian 7. They saw the bodies. They saw the ruins. They saw the Concorde fleet depart without a word of apology, already moving to its next assignment. Something changed that day. Something broke inside humanity. Or perhaps something finally came together. The diplomatic messages stopped. The protests ended. Human space went quiet. Concorde intelligence officers noticed the silence and reported it to their superiors. The analysts concluded that humanity had finally accepted its place in the galaxy. The spirit was broken. The problem was solved. They were very, very wrong. In secret, humanity began to prepare. On Earth, the governments that had fought each other for centuries suddenly stopped fighting. Old enemies shook hands and shared secrets. Military technology that nations had guarded jealously was now given freely to anyone who could use it. For the first time in human history, the entire species worked toward a single goal. Under the frozen surface of Mars, engineers began building shipyards. Deep inside asteroids in the outer solar system, factories started producing weapons. In hidden laboratories on a dozen worlds, scientists worked day and night on projects that should have taken decades. They finished in months. Humanity had always been good at war. It was their great shame and their great strength. Now they poured everything they had into becoming better at it than they had ever been before. The Concorde spies detected increased industrial activity in human space. They saw the power signatures. They noticed the construction, but they misunderstood what they were seeing. They are building memorials, the intelligence reports concluded. They are processing their grief. This is normal behavior for defeated species. It will pass. 3 years passed. The Concorde continued to extract resources from human colonies. They continued to ignore human complaints. They had already forgotten about Meridian 7. Humanity had not forgotten. In a bunker deep beneath the ice of Europa, Admiral James Okonkwo stood before a display showing every Concorde military installation within 50 light years. Red dots marked targets. Blue lines showed attack routes. Green indicators confirmed that all forces were in position. "How long until we're ready?" he asked. His chief of staff checked her tablet. "All units report full combat readiness. We can begin operations within 6 hours." Okonkwo nodded slowly. He thought about Meridian 7. He thought about the 400,000 names carved into the memorial wall behind him. He had read every single name. "Send the signal," he said. "All units, all targets. Simultaneous attack. We begin at midnight, Earth Standard Time." He turned to look at the memorial wall one final time. "We remember," he said quietly. "We remember every single one of you. And now it's time to make them remember too." Across human space, hidden fleets powered up their engines. Secret bases opened their doors. Soldiers checked their weapons and said goodbye to their families. Some of them would not come home. They knew this and accepted it. The hunt was about to begin, and humanity, the persistent predators of a deadly world, would not stop until their prey could run no more. Fleet Commander Vorash checked his instruments for the third time. Everything was normal. His 17th extraction fleet, 400 warships strong, was approaching the human agricultural world of New Helsinki. It was a routine mission. Collect resources, maintain order, move on to the next target. New Helsinki was a farming world. Its population was mostly elderly farmers and young families. They had no military presence. They had no orbital defenses. They were, in conquered military terms, a soft target. "Commander, we are detecting unusual energy readings from the planet's surface," one of his officers reported. Varash barely glanced at the data. "Probably agricultural equipment. These humans use primitive machines to harvest their crops." "Ignore it." The fleet continued its approach. They entered orbit around New Helsinki and began standard protocols. Landing zones were identified. Collection teams were prepared. Everything proceeded according to schedule. Then the first ship exploded. Vorash stared at his display in disbelief. The destroyer, Relentless Justice, had simply vanished. One moment it was there. The next moment it was a cloud of expanding debris. "What happened?" he demanded. Before anyone could answer, 3 more ships exploded. Then 5 more. Then 10. "We are under attack!" someone screamed. "Ships coming from everywhere! They were hiding in the asteroid belt! They were hiding behind the moons! They were hiding in the planet's shadow!" Varash watched in horror as human warships emerged from every direction. These were not the primitive vessels his intelligence reports had described. These ships were fast. They were heavily armed, and there were hundreds of them. All ships, "Return fire," he ordered. "Form defensive positions." His fleet tried to respond, but the humans gave them no time. The attack was perfectly coordinated. Each Concorde ship faced multiple enemies. Whenever a Concorde vessel tried to retreat, human ships were already waiting in its path. And then Varash saw something he would never forget. A human fighter craft, badly damaged and trailing smoke, flew directly toward his command ship. It was not attacking. It was not trying to escape. It was accelerating. "They are going to ram us," his tactical officer said, his voice shaking. "Commander, they are going to ram us with their own bodies." The fighter struck the Relentless Dawn's engine section and exploded. The command ship survived, but barely. All across the battle, Vorish saw the same thing happening. Human pilots were sacrificing themselves to destroy Concorde vessels. They were trading their lives for enemy ships without hesitation. This was not how wars were supposed to work. This was not rational. This was madness. 11 hours after the battle began, Fleet Commander Vorash surrendered. Of his 400 warships, only 23 remained functional. The rest were debris. 50,000 Concorde soldiers were dead. As Varash was taken prisoner, he asked the human officer escorting him a question that had been burning in his mind. "Why do you fight like this? Why do you throw away your lives so easily?" The human, a young woman with burns covering half her face, looked at him with eyes that held no hatred, only cold determination. "We don't throw away our lives," she said. "We spend them. And right now, your empire is very expensive." Across conquered space, the same story repeated itself. 12 fleets attacked, 12 fleets destroyed, 47 military installations attacked, 47 installations captured or destroyed. In a single day, humanity inflicted more damage on the Concorde than it had suffered in 300 years. At Concorde High Command, admirals stared at damage reports in stunned silence. This was impossible. This could not be happening. The humans were nothing. They were insignificant. How could they have built such a fleet without anyone noticing? Then the message came. Every communication system in conquered space, military and civilian, suddenly broadcast the same transmission. A human woman appeared on every screen. She wore a military uniform. Behind her, the flag of the United Terran Military Command hung on the wall. Her eyes were the color of winter ice. "My name is Admiral Helena Vance," she said. "3 years ago, your Concorde killed 400,000 of our people on Meridian 7. We remember their names. We remember every single one of them. Marcus Chen, age 6, Elena Dubois, age 93, Thomas Blackwood, who refused to abandon his people. We remember them all." She paused and let her words sink in. "You took from us. Now we take from you. You thought we were weak because we are small. You thought we would submit because we are few. You were wrong." The image shifted to show footage of the day's battles. Concorde fleets burning, Concorde stations falling, Concorde soldiers surrendering. This is what humanity can do in a single day. Imagine what we will do in a year. Imagine what we will do in a decade. We will not stop. We cannot stop. You have given us something we have never had before. You have given us a common enemy. You have united a species that spent its entire history fighting itself. Admiral Vance leaned closer to the camera. We are the children of a death world. We survived ice ages and plagues and predators and each other. We walked across continents. We conquered oceans. We left our planet and reached for the stars. And we did all of this while fighting among ourselves. Now imagine what we can do when we fight together. Her voice dropped to nearly a whisper. You should have listened to General Kethra. He tried to warn you. He told you what we are. But you laughed. You thought you were safe. You thought your numbers and your technology would protect you. They will not. Nothing will protect you. We are coming, and we do not forgive. We do not forget, and we never ever surrender. The transmission ended. In the Great Hall of Varanthos Prime, High Arbiter Zolmesh called an emergency session of the Galactic Concord. For the first time in 50,000 years, the assembled representatives were afraid. In the corner of the hall, General Kethravone sat quietly and watched. He did not speak. He did not need to. His warning had been ignored, and now the consequences were beginning. He only hoped that when the war ended, there would still be a galaxy left to rebuild. The Galactic Concord expected the war to last 3 months. Their strategists calculated the numbers carefully. Humanity had 12 star systems. The Concord had millions. Humanity had a few thousand warships. The Concord had hundreds of thousands. The math was simple. The outcome was certain. The war lasted 8 years. In the first year, the Concord launched a massive counterattack. 2 million warships from 100 different species converged on human space. They would crush the upstart humans and restore order to the galaxy. The fleet was so large that it blocked out the stars when it arrived. The humans did not try to fight them directly. Instead, they vanished. Human fleets scattered across the galaxy like seeds in the wind. They hid in asteroid fields and gas giants. They traveled through uncharted space where no sane species would go. They appeared, attacked, and disappeared before the Concord could respond. The massive Concord fleet conquered empty space. They captured human colonies only to find the populations gone. The humans had evacuated their own worlds, taking everything of value with them. The Concord won every battle and gained nothing. Where are they? The Concord admirals demanded. Find them and destroy them. But the humans were everywhere and nowhere. A Concord supply convoy would be destroyed, and by the time reinforcements arrived, the attackers were gone. A military base would be captured, its defenders overwhelmed by humans who seemed to appear from thin air. A manufacturing world would wake up to find its orbital stations in human hands. The humans called this way of fighting guerrilla warfare. They had invented it thousands of years ago on Earth, and they had perfected it over centuries of fighting each other. Now they turned it against the conquered. They did not play fair. They did not follow the traditional rules of galactic warfare. They poisoned water supplies. They sabotaged power plants. They spread false information that made conquered commanders attack their own allies. They bribed officials and turned soldiers into spies. And they used something the conquered had never encountered before: psychological warfare. Human ships would appear above conquered worlds and broadcast messages. Not threats, not demands, just information. Your government told you that we attacked first, the messages would say. This is a lie. They killed 400,000 of our civilians on Meridian 7. Here is the footage. Here are the names of the dead. Here is the Concord order that authorized the massacre. Your leaders have lied to you. How many other lies have they told? On some worlds, the messages were ignored. On others, they planted seeds of doubt. And doubt, the humans knew, was more dangerous than any weapon. By the 3rd year of the war, the Concord had lost 50 star systems, not to direct military conquest, but to rebellion. Species that had been Concord members for thousands of years began to question their loyalty. If the Concord could massacre civilians so easily, what else were they capable of? If they could lie about one thing, what other lies were they telling? The humans treated surrendering enemies with respect. They fed prisoners. They provided medical care. They released captured soldiers with messages for their families. Word spread through the Concord that the humans were harsh in battle but kind in victory. This confused the Concord deeply. Their own policies were the opposite. They were kind before battle, offering terms and negotiations. But those who resisted were punished without mercy. The humans did it backwards, and somehow it was working. General Kethra watched the war from his homeworld and understood what was happening. The humans were not just fighting a military campaign. They were fighting for hearts and minds. They were turning the Concord's own subjects against it. In the 5th year of the war, the Thessian Dominion declared neutrality. Kethra had spent years preparing his people for this moment. When the declaration was made, he broadcast a message explaining why. "I warned the Concord about the humans," he said. "I told them to make peace. They laughed and voted for war. Now millions are dead, and millions more will die before this is over. The Thessian people will not sacrifice our children for the Concord's pride. We welcome any who wish to join us in peace." 17 other species followed the Thessians into neutrality within the next month. The Concord began to crack. By the 7th year, humanity had grown from 12 star systems to over 200. Some were conquered. Others had joined willingly, their populations rising up against Concord rule and welcoming human forces as liberators. The tiny species that the Concord had dismissed as nothing was now a major galactic power. High Arbiter Zolmesh, the ancient crystal being who led the Concord, refused to accept defeat. In its long existence, it had never lost. It would not start now. "We will gather every remaining fleet," Zolmesh commanded. "Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. We will strike at the heart of human civilization. We will destroy Earth itself. Without their homeworld, the humans will have nothing to fight for." The order went out across what remained of conquered space. Ships that had been defending vital systems were recalled. Soldiers who had been holding critical positions were redeployed. Everything was thrown into one final attack. 18,000 warships assembled at the edge of human space. It was the largest fleet in galactic history. It carried enough firepower to destroy planets. At its center flew the crystalline throne, Zolmesh's personal flagship, a vessel so large that it had its own gravity. The fleet began its journey to Sol. Admiral Helena Vance, commander of human forces, received reports of the approaching armada. She studied the numbers and smiled. "They've committed everything," she said to her staff. "Every ship they have, every soldier, every weapon, and they're bringing it all to us." Her tactical officer looked concerned. "Admiral, we cannot defeat a fleet that size in direct combat. We have 300 ships in the Sol system. They have 18,000. Vance nodded. "You're right. We can't defeat them in direct combat." She turned to look at a map of the solar system. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the asteroid belt, the Kuiper belt. Billions of rocks floating in the darkness between planets. "Good thing we're not planning to fight them directly." She began issuing orders. Hidden installations across the outer solar system activated. Weapons that had been waiting for years powered up. Shipyards that the Concord had never detected opened their doors. The trap was set. Now all humanity had to do was wait for their prey to walk into it. The Concord Armada entered the Sol system like a wave of steel and fire. 18,000 warships stretched across space in formations that had conquered 1,000 worlds. At the center of the fleet, the crystalline throne blazed with light. High Arbiter Zolmesh directing the final battle from its command chamber. "Human fleet detected," the sensor officer reported. 300 vessels holding position near the 3rd planet. Zolmesh made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Satisfaction. 300 against 18,000. They know they cannot win. They are preparing to die defending their homeworld. Admirable, in a primitive way. Order all ships to advance. Let us finish this. The Armada moved forward. The human fleet began to retreat, pulling back toward the outer planets. The Concord pursued. "They are running," one of Zolmesh's commanders observed. "They are drawing us deeper into their system." "Of course they are," Zolmesh replied. "They hope to make us fight in unfamiliar territory. It will not save them. Continue the pursuit." Past Mars they flew, past the asteroid belt, past the giant planet Jupiter with its swirling storms. The human fleet stayed just out of reach, always retreating, never engaging. Some Concord commanders grew uneasy. This felt wrong. This felt planned. But Zolmesh dismissed their concerns. What could the humans possibly do? They were outnumbered 60 to 1. Their only choice was to delay the inevitable. The Armada reached Saturn, and then the trap closed. The first wave came from Saturn's rings. Millions of ice chunks, some as large as cities, suddenly accelerated toward the Concorde fleet at impossible speeds. Hidden engines planted years ago pushed the frozen rocks forward. They struck the Armada like bullets from a god's gun. 1,000 Concorde ships died in the first minute. "Evasive maneuvers," Zolmesh commanded. "All ships, scatter." But there was nowhere to scatter to. From every direction, more attacks came. Asteroids from the belt beyond Mars arrived at relativistic speeds, their trajectories calculated years in advance. Hidden weapons platforms among Jupiter's moons opened fire with weapons the Concorde had never seen. The darkness between planets came alive with human warships that had been waiting, silent and cold, for this exact moment. Not 300 ships, thousands. The humans had hidden an entire fleet in the outer solar system. They had built shipyards and hollowed out asteroids. They had turned the entire system into a weapon, and they had waited patiently for the Concorde to commit everything to this one attack. The Battle of Seoul lasted 19 days. It was not a battle in any traditional sense, it was a hunt. The conquered fleet tried to fight, tried to retreat, tried to survive. The humans pursued them with the same relentless patience that their ancestors had used to chase prey across ancient grasslands. Concorde ships that surrendered were taken prisoner. Those that fought were destroyed. There was no middle ground. On the 15th day, the crystalline throne found itself surrounded. Zolmesh's flagship was the most powerful vessel in the conquered fleet, but even it could not fight off hundreds of human warships attacking from every angle. One by one, its weapons fell silent, its shields failed, its engines died. Human Marines boarded through a dozen breaches in the hull. They moved through the massive ship with terrible efficiency, taking control of deck after deck. Zolmesh watched them come through its security cameras and felt something it had not felt in 10,000 years. Fear. When the Marines reached the command chamber, Zolmesh expected death. It had ordered the deaths of millions. It deserved no mercy. It prepared itself for destruction. But the human commander, a woman with gray in her hair and steel in her eyes, did not order its execution. Instead, she looked at the ancient crystal being with an expression Zolmesh did not understand. "High Arbiter Zolmesh," she said, "you are under arrest for crimes against humanity. You will be given a fair trial. You will be allowed to defend yourself, and then, if found guilty, you will face justice." Zolmesh's crystalline form flickered with confusion. "You are not going to kill me?" "No." "Why?" "I ordered the destruction of your colony. I killed 400,000 of your people. I tried to exterminate your entire species. Why would you spare me?" The commander stepped closer. Her name tag read, Okonkwo. She was the daughter of the admiral who had launched the first human counterattack 8 years ago. "Because we have to be better than what you made us," she said. "That's what being human means. We could become monsters. You certainly tried hard enough to turn us into ones. But we choose not to. We choose to be something else." The war ended 3 days later. The Treaty of Earth was signed in the ruins of the Galactic Concorde's government. The old order was dissolved. A new organization, the Galactic Assembly, took its place. Every species, regardless of size or power, would have an equal voice. Humanity was named a founding member. General Kethra Vone traveled to Earth for the signing ceremony. He walked through human cities and saw a species finally at peace with itself. They had built monuments to their war dead, but they had also built parks and schools and homes. They were already looking to the future, even as they honored the past. After the ceremony, Kethra visited the Meridian 7 Memorial. It was a simple place. A wall of black stone with 400,000 names carved into it. Fresh flowers covered the ground at its base. He stood before the wall for a long time, reading the names. Marcus Chen, Elena Dubois, Thomas Blackwood, so many names. So many lives ended too soon. He took out a small tool and, in the Thessian way of showing respect, carved his own name into the bottom of the wall. Not as one of the dead, but as one who mourned. A human family watched him do this. A mother, a father, two young children. They did not speak Thessian. He did not speak their language. But when he finished, the mother nodded to him, and he nodded back. Some things did not need translation. That night, Kethra stood on a balcony overlooking the human capital city. Ships flew overhead, carrying representatives from 1,000 species to their new embassy buildings. The galaxy was changing. Everything was changing. A young human officer joined him. "General Kethra," she said, "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For trying to warn them. For trying to prevent all of this." Kethra looked at her with ancient eyes. "I failed. They did not listen. Millions died because of that failure." The officer shook her head. "You didn't fail. You did everything you could. And when the war came, your people stayed out of it. You saved Thessian lives by having the courage to stand alone." She paused. "That's something humans understand. Standing alone because it's the right thing to do." Kethra considered this. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps he had not failed completely. "What happens now?" he asked. The officer looked up at the stars. "Now we build something better. Together." And so they did. In the decades that followed, the Galactic Assembly grew strong. Conflicts still happened, but they were resolved through negotiation rather than extermination. Species that had been enemies for millennia learned to work together. And at the heart of it all stood humanity, the Death World survivors who had refused to surrender. They were still stubborn, still emotional, still prone to holding grudges and fighting among themselves. But they were also capable of forgiveness, capable of mercy, capable of building as well as destroying. The galaxy learned to live with them, and in time the galaxy learned to be grateful for them, because the humans had taught the stars a lesson that would never be forgotten. The smallest voice can shake the heavens. The weakest species can shatter empires. And those who fight for each other, who stand together against impossible odds, who refuse to give up no matter the cost, they can change everything. Beware the humans. But more importantly, befriend them, because there are no better allies in the universe than those who have already proven they will never stop fighting for what they love.